Hello, everyone, and welcome to GCEC's Virtual Connections. Here we are in April 2026. My name is Jeff Reed. I'm the founding director of the Entrepreneurship Initiative at Georgetown University and your host for these Virtual Connections series. You can see on our slide here, we have a prompt. We encourage our attendees to drop in the chat. What's the most unusual or memorable pitch competition moment you've witnessed? So I'm sure we all have stories. Feel free to drop some of those in the chat. That might help us get the conversation going. Soon I will be turning over to our amazing panelist or featured speaker today. Not yet, but I will soon, and we're really excited to hear from John Dick, who is, as you can see, the managing director of Velocity at the University of Waterloo. We're going to hear all about what is beyond pitch competition. So I'm excited to hear all about that from John, and we'll have a chance for our audience to ask questions and chime in and continue the conversation in the chat. Before I turn it over to John, a couple of announcements. Many of you know that GCEC is having its second global summit this summer. This one's going to be at Sao Paulo, Brazil, hosted by ESPM. I am registered. I am excited to go. I hope all of you will join. It's going to be an amazing gathering. I think we all know that there are a lot of amazing entrepreneurship programs around the world. Some of those folks have a harder time traveling to the United States these days. So we're excited to see people in a place that maybe is easier for them to access, and just a lot of great activities going to happen. So please check out the website. I hope you'll join us in Sao Paulo, Brazil in July. It's going to be amazing. Also, a couple of months later, we're going to be in Tallahassee for the GCEC annual conference. Florida State University, we appreciate them stepping up as an amazing host. We figured out the dates, so it's not a football weekend, which means we can get hotels that are not incredibly over expensive and are actually available. So we're looking forward to seeing hundreds of you, and it's just an amazing conference will be happening this year at Florida State. Also, now is the time to nominate yourself or a friend or somebody that you admire. Most of the time it's a self-nomination, but the GCEC Awards are coming up. This is an amazing opportunity to recognize, it's our opportunity to recognize excellence, right? I know if you're like me, the people at my own school don't really know what I do as well as, their opinions are not as important to me in many cases. This is being recorded. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But when you get an award from your peers, it means a lot. That's the thing to say. So here's a chance to nominate yourself for a GCEC award. All right. That's the end of the announcements. It's now time for me to turn it over to John Dick, University of Waterloo. Over to you, John.
Oh, thank you very much, Jeff. I love your intros. They just get better and better somehow. But really appreciate it and appreciate you coming here. I'm sharing my screen now. Okay, can you all see my slides? There? Okay, great. Terrific. Okay, well, thanks for joining today. Thanks for the great intro. Always and nice to see so many familiar faces here today. I'm actually talking about this presentation. I was asked to give it. I actually gave it back in Calgary at the conference there. So somewhat surprising to me that it was really picked up. People really enjoyed it. So happy to deliver it to a larger audience to you today. I am John Dick. I'm managing director of the Velocity program at the University of Waterloo. So a little background on the University of Waterloo. If you don't know where it is, it's about an hour and a half west of Toronto. We are a relatively young university, founded in 1957. The founders of the university really wanted to create an organization that was designed to solve the challenges of the day. And so it was heavily focused on engineering and science to start, although it has now grown to include the first faculty of math in the world, I believe, as well as faculty of arts, environment, and health. It is the largest co-op program in North America, second in the world. And the idea behind this was for our students to gain a real understanding of industry as part of their degree. So any student that is taking a co-op degree, it's a 5-year degree, and they get up to 2 years of work experience as integrated into their degree. They must get a work term in order to graduate. Because of this too, we've also have a creator-owned IP policy. So our founders wanted to say that let's get the university out of the way in terms of commercializing research that occurs in the labs there. So anything that is created within a Waterloo lab is owned by the researchers and the inventors of said research. This has helped quite a bit in terms of drawing entrepreneurially minded researchers to the institution to work there. And all of this has really led to some great entrepreneurial outcomes. We have between 37,000 and 42,000 students in any given year. No business school, no law school, no med school. So we really focus on teaching and research. We have, and then some accolades about the university. We're number 18 in the world for undergraduate entrepreneurs globally. That's from PitchBook last year. Recently found out that 22% of unicorn founders, Canadian unicorn founders, graduated with a degree from the University of Waterloo. That is the most of any institution in Canada. And nearly 1 in 5 tech founders in Canada graduated from the University of Waterloo. So we really punch above our weight, I think, for a relatively medium-sized university in Canada. And Velocity, who I represent, is the entrepreneurship center for the university. Since 2008, we were founded in 2008 as a residence incubator. So the powers that be decided an experiment to conduct an experiment to say, what if we take a 70-room residence and make it our entrepreneurial residence, have all the students there thinking about starting companies, working to start companies. And that's what they did. They did so very quickly. It was extremely successful. Those students needed a place to start their companies in earnest. That was better than a residence room. And so we opened up the first Velocity incubator off campus in downtown Kitchener, about 10 minutes away from campus. And since then, it's just continued to grow. We've supported over 1,200 founders who have started over 500 companies. They've been very successful in raising 4.7 billion US in investment, generating an enterprise value of 29 billion US. They've created over 11,000 jobs, and recently, in the last couple of years, we spun out our own investment fund called the Velocity Fund, and that. The University Endowment was the first and is the major LP for that fund, putting in $5 million. And then the GPs, who happen to be Velocity alums, had to raise the rest. And then they started investing in earnest last year and have made 20 investments so far. So they are one of the fastest deploying VCs in North America currently. The funnel that powers all of this comes from our campus. Last year, we had nearly 1,700 students participate in our programming. That they represented over 500 individual teams, so teams and research groups that were looking to start companies and commercialize their work. We have an incubator that's grown now. We moved a year and a half ago into our new incubator called the Innovation Arena. And that's 45,000 square feet of space that has office space, product development spaces, everything you need to start a company. Would be happy to show any of you around if you're ever in town. It's a really nice facility. And currently we have 68 teams that are operating full time out of that incubator, but we have space for about 90 teams. Okay, so let's talk about pitch competition. So we did a bit of an analysis a couple of years ago when we were looking to spin out the fund on the success of our pitch competition. So I mentioned that Velocity started in 2008. One of the very first Velocity students started a company called Kick Interactive, which was one of the very first instant messengers that went really big globally. He was nice enough to donate 7-figure amount back to the university to start a pitch competition. And so we were able to run a pitch competition from 2011 to 2019. And we were able to give out four $25,000 prizes every single term. So three times a year, we were able to run this pitch competition and give out prizes, which gave us an enormous amount of data to review and see the success of those teams over that time. And we have a couple of pictures here. The picture on the left is the one of the very first pitch competitions that happened. It was done in one of the rooms in on campus, open to the public. People were walking by at the same time. What I love about this picture, not only is the joy on the faces and everybody there, but actually I've counted and there are 9 different people, both in the foreground and the background, that went on to start companies and are entrepreneurs currently. And the gentleman who's applauding, sitting down applauding, he is actually the GP for the Velocity Fund at this point in time. So he came through a program and he's there now. As time moved on, you can see on the right that maybe the production value of the pitch competition increased a little bit, but we were able to give out prizes for a very long period of time, and it was really great. So when analyzing and thinking about pitch competitions, I know this is the kind of the go-to for many of our organizations that, if you have an entrepreneurship center, you have to run a pitch competition. And there are great aspects to pitch competitions. They are inspiring. They're great for recruitment. I've had a number of students come up to me and say, I was in the audience for a pitch competition last year, made me realize that I wanted to do something similar, and then they really went for it the following year and started working on their own ideas. It's very energizing, very exciting to have pitch competitions. You never know who's going to win, what's going to happen. The chat and all the stories in the chat were fantastic. We got really interesting, exciting stories. We got some really strange ones too. So you never know what's going to happen. Very energizing environment. It's great for community outreach. It's great to bring in external people, people from around campus to come in and watch the event and to learn more about what your entrepreneurship center does and to see the founders themselves. It's very confidence building for the students. A lot of them are very shy when they first start, but once they get practicing, once they get on stage, they get very good at this. And it's just really great to see that progression in them. And then it's also a way to provide funding for students. It's a way to make sure that they have the funds they need to carry on the activities that they want to do. But with all the good comes some challenges as well. And these are things we found that the best teams don't always win. We as entrepreneurship centers work very hard with a lot of these teams. And if the only funding or significant funding that's available to them is through winning a pitch competition, that leaves a lot to chance. And when when you're hoping for and that a team is really committed and working on something great, if they have a bad day or just aren't able to pitch very well on that day, it can be really, really disheartening. It's also a huge organizational lift. While we were running these, I had to dedicate a single person on my team who's more or less their full-time job was to organize and plan and run the pitch competition. And that's a significant percentage of anybody's team to have a person whose only job it is to organize and work on a competition. There's also a high rejection rate, and this is the thing that got to me the most, is that every single term we would have 100 students, give or take, put in an application for the competition. We ran it as an application phase. We review them, semifinals, where we could have about 20 to 24 teams, and then we'd select a final 8 for the finals. Well, 24, that's 75% or more would be rejected. And a lot of these students who are putting in applications, maybe that was their first contact with Velocity, and the first thing they received back from us was a rejection. And that always sat really poorly with me. And I know there would be a better way than to have that be the case. It's also kind of transactional sometimes. Sometimes a team would come out of nowhere. You'd be really excited because you get to see a new team and they're working on something really great. They come in, participate in a pitch competition, maybe win the pitch competition, grab the check, and you never see them again. And so there's that transactional piece to it that's kind of tough and always
Bless you.
that wrong with me as well. And then also the other thing about pitch competitions is that you're pitching a business, and there's more of a focus on what is the business, what is the market opportunity, how have you thought about your go-to-market, what is your IP situation, all these things we think about when running a business, but that takes away from the founder, right? That we're judging the business instead of judging the founder, and I think I take it as my responsibility to train founders, not necessarily the first responsibility is to like build great businesses. Like if I build a great founder or I support a great founder, they'll build a great business. But I want to get that order in the correct way. So those are challenges I found. And then we also did an analysis of this pitch competition. We had 9 years of data, 3 times a year, so good data set. And we looked at it to say like, okay, if we had if every one of our grants, $25,000 grants, had been a investment instead of a grant, how well would we have done if we were a fund? So we looked at it that way, and we found that our fund would have returned 1.1x. And then we needed to compare it to a control. So then we looked at all velocity teams that ever participated in our programming and took part in our incubator. How would they have done if we had just given them all $25,000? How would the fund have returned? And it was more around 4x. Now, it was 80% of the teams that we put in. We didn't count the teams that worked with us for a term and then disappeared and didn't really start their company. So we did adjust the data a little bit. But pretty much any team, if we had just flat out had $25,000 for everybody, we would have returned 4x. So what was great about this was it made a really good argument to the fund or justification for the fund that investment in velocity founders is a good bet and is going to make a good return, which is really exciting. But on the other side of it, when we analyzed, okay, well, how effective was the pitch competition for predicting which teams would be successful and which teams we wanted to support, it was pretty weak. We obviously invested or gave money to a lot of teams that went on to do nothing. And we also missed a lot of teams who went on to do great things, and we didn't give them any money at a time when they could have really used the funding. And I've spoken to a few of those founders in the interim, and they're still a little upset about it. Still bothers them. So not really good for relations on that side. So things that just happen when you have kind of these open competitions where anything can happen. And then the other part of it was that we had no other source of funding for students. Like we were forced to deliver the funding in this way because that's what the donor wanted us to do, wanted it to be a pitch competition. So this was the only option available to us. But it was also the only reliable source of funding that we had. So we really, this was the only lever, and it was kind of tough for this reason. So what happens, and then, thought a little bit further in our analysis, okay, what happens when you do an overemphasis on pitch competition specifically? And we found that there are quite a few founders who confuse pitch competition wins as validation of their business, where they would not only maybe win our pitch competition, but go around back when pitch competitions were much more in vogue. They could go around and just like do a bunch of pitch competitions just in Ontario alone, and win a bunch of funding, which was great. But then when we talked to them about validation, talked to them about talking to customers, the response was like, well, now I have all this money, now I just got to build because all of these judges think that this is a good idea. And not only that, they gave me money for it. So obviously I'm working on a real idea right now. And we had a number of teams that would otherwise have been promising not do the work, not do the discovery, not do the validation work, built something that was never adopted and then petered away. So that is a challenge. And then an overemphasis on pitch competition also signals that pitching is what matters. Like pitching to an audience of 100 people is what entrepreneurs do. And quite frankly, that's not what entrepreneurs do, right? When you are engaging, normally it's one-on-one. Normally you don't have a pitch deck. You're not on a timer. You're just engaging with customers and finding out what their needs are, and then figuring out how you make a better solution from that information. And that is the kind of skill set we want them to be working on and preparing for and practicing daily. Not this idea of like, well, you got to get in front of a crowd, you got to have the perfect deck, and you got to do that kind of work. And so that's also a piece that would bother us. And really, what would really get to me, like the one that really hurt my soul, was when we had a team doing the work, going out there, talking to customers, validating their idea, and then the pitch competition was coming up, and they would drop all that great work and focus on the pitch competition and lose all that momentum that they had generated in talking to customers, and then have to pick it up again in a month's time or whatever. And that's the one that really stuck with me. So so now I described the problem, and now I'm going to get into a solution. It might not be the solution for everybody. I'm going to get into the solution that we came up with. So we thought to ourselves, okay, why don't we just give the good teams the funding? Like, why do we dress it up in a pitch competition? Why can't we just give them the funding? And so we came up with an idea called momentum grants. We have the benefit of having an incubator that is primarily for students post graduation. So after they've graduated, they come in here as their first office space, product development space. A lot of them are now not being supported by their parents as much. A lot of them are not from the city, not from Waterloo. And so if they want to continue working on their business and they don't have a source of funding, they normally would have to go home, but then lose all the opportunities that come in being part of this community. So part of it was solving our own problem to say, like, okay, if we give them a bit of funding that allows them to pay rent, eat some food, stay here, and then ideally get enough time to get their first round of funding, first customers, whatever they need. And so this was solving a bit of a problem for our own incubator, but also solving this problem of you leaving everything up to chance in order for them to have some funding to get started. So we would provide grants to our committed founders who are entering the incubator, but you do have to be careful with this, because how do you know you're not just giving a bunch of funding to people you like, that your team likes, and not keeping it as an open process? Like, you still have to be accessible, so you have to watch out for that. So the way we look at it, and this is something that we use throughout our entire time with our team on campus, is what makes a team good, and we have a competency framework where we've identified 6 skills that we really focus on: bias to action, relentless resourcefulness, customer obsession, positive ambition, resilience to adversity, and outstanding communication. And before we give one of these grants to a student or to a new graduate, we have to have a story that fits all 6 of these items. We have to make sure they tick these boxes. Even if they're working on one of those items, if we know it's a weakness, it helps keep our own team grounded to make sure that, okay, they may be working on this and it's improving, and that's fine, and we can give them a grant and they can keep moving. And now, not to undermine the entire thesis of my talk, but pitch competitions are still useful. Like, there's still really great things, pitch competition, which were all the good things that I listed at the top. But maybe they got to be thought of in a different way. And so what we did with the momentum grants when we first presented them last year was we had those recipients do a pitch competition. So we were able to say, okay, you are the 10 selected teams. You all have funding, but now let's get a top up. And I was able to get a sponsor to provide the funding on top of that. So it didn't have to come from my own trust budget, but actually was provided externally. And we were able to generate the energy, inspire people, bring external people in to check it out. The quality of these pitches was much higher than you would normally find, because they've been doing a lot of work in validation, and the quality of them was up there. So that helped quite a bit. So having a different way of thinking about the pitch competition is one way to do it. And the other thing that we're going to do, which is going to happen in September, and is based on the Rice Business Plan competition idea, and I know that WashU does a version of this too, and I'm sure many of you do this, is to have a very open and broad pitch competition. So instead of this highly selective process of semifinals and finals, what I'm saying is I want 100 pitches and 100 judges in one afternoon and bring all these people together, have the students pitch. There's going to be a range of quality there and have all the judges understand that that's going to be the case. But get our advancement group in to like bring a bunch of people in, bring a bunch of our alumni in, bring current founders from the incubator in, bring people in the community from various industries, bring them all in. We're going to if we have 100 pitches, break them up into 5 rooms based on industry, and then have feedback. Basically, get the students up there pitching their ideas, and it's more about the feedback. It's more about saying like, "Oh, you're working in my industry. I want to talk to you after. I want to help you validate this idea. I want to help make some connections for you," and have those connections happen between the audience and the pitchers. And then that way, we just get the whole community working and supporting our founders and making those connections, which we know they need. It's going to be like a bunch of these things happening. We'll have a lunch or a break in between, which will be for networking, so all these teams can meet each other. We'll do a final 8 10 teams in a big auditorium for everybody to make sure that we're excited and keeping the energy up. But this is a way to just satisfy a whole bunch of different groups at the university, including ourselves, and make these connections that we think will be really valuable for the teams moving on. So that's how I'm thinking about pitch competitions now, and I think that's the end of my talk. So happy to chat and answer any questions.
Excellent, John. I really appreciate all this, and I encourage our audience here to either throw your questions in the chat or use the raised hand function if you want to speak up. I appreciated how you kind of brought it back at the end to how you can use a pitch competition in combination, because I was going to ask you that. The events we see do drive a lot of attention, engagement of donors. You can get students excited who might not be pitching that year, but they come see what it's all about and maybe come back the next year. So I like that. I have a question for you. We see our university has a lot of restrictions on giving money to students. I saw how you give your momentum grants. Is it exclusively to graduates, or are sometimes they're students? And then there's also a question around timing, right? We find that students in their last year of school, whether they're an undergraduate senior or a grad student, if they don't have some commitment early enough in the school year, they might accept the job. So how do you manage those kind of dynamics?
Yeah, those are great questions. I think that I've been lucky enough that the trust we have a trust set up that donors can donate to, and it's normally small gifts that they're giving. But within that trust, the rules are pretty liberal about who we can award the funding to. So that allows us to within reason have a new graduate, a new alum be a recipient of award. We tend to focus it at that time because we know the commitments there. We know they're not taking a job, and so that's why we focus. So it's a little bit on us to say, all right, this is helping us out, but it is our job to ensure that we are supporting teams that move forward. Now, with this trust, I am able to provide funding to a great current student who's just got tons of traction in building a great business. I can support them too, and I probably put it into a momentum grant. So the rules are pretty open for me. I know that's not the case for everybody, and I know that's really hard to design like a very specific set around. But if you can give yourself that flexibility, it's great. Not everyone will be able to, and I'm very open to other ideas on how we can provide funding for the best teams and do it in a way that works for everybody here. So that could be a great topic of conversation. So that's just what works for me. The second question you had was, can you
It
remind
was
me?
around the timing of the commitment, right? So we have students who, are kind of playing two tracks. They're working on a startup, but they're also interviewing for jobs. And it's hard for them to sometimes make a decision if we're going to give them funding to use after graduation. Sometimes we need to tell them that pretty early. Do you have that same issue?
Yeah, we have that same issue. So a lot of our teams come from the engineering final year capstone course. So we have a lot of engineering students. They've opened up the capstone design project to the entire university now. So students from all six faculties can take part. And we've been heavily involved in that and also talking about validation of these ideas. So you're not just building something that for a problem that they've just heard of, but actually engaging. So we're engaging a lot with the faculties early and at the beginning of the year so that they know this is available. And then the other side of it is that we're now running a summer accelerator for new graduates. That was luckily funded by our province. So I'm able to give funding, and actually this takes the pressure off the momentum grants because now the province is providing funding for 30 teams to take part in our summer accelerator. So the message I have for students who are thinking, should I take a job or should I pursue this idea, is if you can delay the start of your job to September and give yourself more time to try to validate and see if you can get some early traction on your idea and then make the decision later on so it's not as risky. That's the ideal situation. So a few of them have done that and it's worked. And some of them decide to take the job and some of them keep going with the startup. And so I just try to open up that timing a little bit more for them.
Cool. All right. Well, our next question will go to the other side of the DC Beltway here. Michael Hoffmeyer from College Park, Maryland.
Hi, John. It's good to see you again. A quick
Yeah, good to
question.
see you.
So we've experimented with a lot of these funding mechanisms from micro grants all the way up to funding recent graduates and have found a lot of the same things that you have. So I completely agree with all of the assertions you made in here. Quick process question, especially for the funding for recent graduates. What is your eligibility criteria in terms of their participation in your programs leading up to that? Because some of these students come in the second half of their senior year right before they graduate and start engaging in programs, and I'm just curious what your approach was to that.
Yeah, it's that's always a tricky
John,
one.
real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before you answer, would you mind taking down the slides? We can see more
Oh,
faces that
sorry,
way.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me do that. Yeah, that's great. So we can, yeah, because I can see all of you on my screen. But anyway, okay. So, right. So, in terms of engagement, yeah, we're kind of lucky too because we have our incubator team or the advisors who work for our incubator um, are engaged on campus, but not heavily. And so they are kind of our red team when looking at the teams coming in to say like, okay, um, let's check out these six different competencies. Let's make sure that they're there. Let's be a double check so we're not doing things in a biased way. So we have a couple of advisors who can provide us with a different point of view and having been working with the teams. Um, the other thing we look at is we really focus on traction. So if even if they've engaged with us in the last month of school, but have some great traction, business traction, it's like okay, that sort of speaks for itself. We take kind of an investor point of view on that side of things. Um, on the other side is though we want to make sure we're focusing on the individual. So it's about the founder. So if they are committed to working on something for the next 4 months and are going to be engaged and be good community members. We try to suss that out through our interview process and through knowing. It's a lot easier if they've been working with us for a lot longer, but we try to keep an open mind for anyone who's new. We do have a mandate from the university to support new graduates and current students, so we do have to make sure we give everyone a fair chance. Um, a lot of them will. The other piece that we do is we run a sprint at the beginning of every term. So we run a validation sprint, which is 2 weeks long, and it's a program that we run always at the beginning of the term. So in May, even though I have new graduates, we make them do that sprint again. So even if they've done it a bunch of times or if they've never done it before, um, we make them do that sprint to see what kind of skin and like get them to put some skin in the game. Say like, okay, you say you want to do this. You say you're ready to talk to customers, spin something out. Okay, well, let's see you do a 2 week validation sprint where you're not working on your you close your laptop, you get out of the lab, and you just go talk to customers, and let's see you do that, and that gives us a good feel for how engaged they are as well.
All right. We got a lot of questions in the chat. I'll throw one out here. I think this is Robin saying, how do you balance these differences between donors who want to see real businesses? It sounds like your structures may address this, but
Yeah.
when you've got actual businesses, I know we see this a lot where, and you reference this, right? Pitch competition winner may be great at pitching. The business may not end up, even if they really wanted to make it work, they may figure out it's not going to work. And the money doesn't end up funding a business, right? It just goes into the student pocket. Uh, I guess the structure you set up kind of mitigates against that, and that's one of the reasons you did it that way to kind of focus on real traction, real businesses, not just great pitches.
Yeah, yeah. And even within the pitch competition, the last few times we were running it in the old version, I could pull the judges aside at the beginning and sort of say, hey, the focus of this competition is traction, is how much are these founders actually doing? And please ask them questions on that. How many people have they engaged? What, how much have they done in sales or LOIs? And like, how do they know that they have a real business? And it could lean into that. And that's how you can kind of tilt the scales a little bit towards traction rather than somebody who's just got a cool idea and you know
Yeah.
developed a pitch deck around it. So you can sort of work the system as it is that way, and that was pretty effective in the old format. But it was still the other aspect of like I just didn't like rejecting 75% of the people who are coming in every time. And that's why the validation sprint is are a bit of a replacement. So the time we spent on the pitch competition, now we put on the validation sprint because everybody's accepted to it. I don't even call it an application process for that program. It's a registration. It's just come right in. We will help you figure out who you need to talk to and help you do it over 2 weeks.
I think Frank Rimolowski, you guys do something kind of like that, right? At the beginning of each term, you have a boot camp, I think, or you may have a different word for it, but it's kind of almost everybody gets accepted, and I think that's worked well for you. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. We do actually we actually call it a startup boot camp. We do them throughout both semesters, fall and spring. So we do about four each semester and one over the summer. The way we restructured them this year, yeah, we pretty much, if you have an NYU ID and a heartbeat, you get in. And then we look to see who really does the work, does the customer discovery, all that stuff that we all know. I see John nodding his head
You didn't know I was going to cold call
enthusiastically
you,
here.
did you?
And then that also feeds into our sprint that we run during J term and then again in May. So actually we're keying up for one in a couple weeks, in a month.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, John, and anybody else maybe. Your momentum grants, I think you said, are 25,000. Is that right?
Those are 10,000.
10,000. And I guess the question is like, is it always one amount up front, or do you have any process for giving a little bit, and then if they continue to hit milestones, give more? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think you got to balance. I've played with both models, and you got to balance the overhead and the time it takes to allocate funding
Yeah.
with like how much how you know like how well it's going to help them hit their milestones. So where we landed with the momentum grants as we ran them before, we are pretty confident on all the teams, so we just gave them the funding as a lump sum. But for the summer accelerator program that we're running, which is provincially funded, we are giving about 80% of the funding. They do the sprint first, so that's their skin in the game. Then we give them 80% of the funding at that point in time, and then we save a little bit at the end to just make sure they carry through the program. So
Yeah.
try to,
A little bit of
yeah,
hook to get them to do everything. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
I know some programs run like a declining balance model where you kind of tell the students you have X dollars available to you, but we'll only release it when you have expenses to cover. I can imagine that's just a nightmare in terms of the administration of it. But
yeah, that's a lot of overhead. It's hard enough. I mean, sometimes it feels like the hardest thing is to actually give out the money that we have, not even bring the money in, but just get it out there with the processes at the university. So I tend not to go past like two issuances because any more than that is just I teams will will be messaging me like a month after I said that they got the funding to ask where it is. And
Yeah.
that doesn't do anyone any good.
Universities aren't very fast at dispersing money, right?
No.
Yeah. And it's taxable income, at least in the US, right? That's one of the issues we run into. Students just have to know that it's going to be reported. For some of them, it's an issue, others not. If they're an international student, it might create additional challenges there.
Yeah.
Always fun to manage that.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Anybody want to? I see there's some stuff going on in the chat. But yeah, hand up. And from Bentley University, I don't know how to pronounce your name, so you can introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonida. I'm from Bentley University. We have an entrepreneur center. It's pretty new, and I had a question because we are running an incubator. This was last year was the second year we run that, and we are historically a school that was focused on sending the students to Big Fours. So entrepreneurship is kind of a bigger challenge for us now because we have to change the culture of our students. The question that I had is if you had any advice on that, and how do you manage your data, knowing who are the teams, who participated when, what are they doing, what's their business? How well are they doing? Because we are just right now starting getting some data, and we just want to structure right from the beginning on the best way possible. Thank you.
That is a whole other talk, the data piece. And I'm sure that we will see presentations on that in the future. I can speak quickly to what my team does, and everybody I think, has different input onto this. I use Airtable we use Airtable as our focus. I've had basically one person's full-time job has been to work on the data piece. I've been very lucky to be able to do that for 2 or 3 years now. And so it's taken us a long time to figure out like, okay, what are the metrics we need to cover? What are the stories we want to tell? What's the information you need to gather? What counts as participation? What counts as programming? All of these things. You The thing that helps is having an understanding of what the KPIs are from the powers that be, the people from your institution, the ranking systems, whatever you're using the data for your own purposes as well. What are the KPIs you want to measure, and then sort of work backwards to make sure that you're capturing all of that information. What's great about us is just having a date stamped onto every entry point for a student that does something with us. So if they did the pitch competition, if they joined our programming here, if they did something else here, get into the incubator, we can roadmap their journey with velocity over time, and that's been extremely helpful both for storytelling and getting information out there, but also telling us how students are engaging with us, how they're finding us, and then how they're navigating us throughout a 4 or 5 year journey. So that's a very quick answer to something there, but I'm sure everybody here has a different answer for you, and you will get lots of great input.
Yeah, we've had this question come up frequently, and Airtable does seem to be the most common tool. But yeah, managing it is not easy. It does take work and resources, but you can learn a lot from that. One question in the chat that I'll pull up, and then I'll let Louise have a say. A question from the chat, though, is around, I think it's Caroline Shadler, maybe. Looking back on your experience, you know, doing a pitch competition at the beginning of building a program, I think you would say, yes, that is a good way. Like, it's a great way to build momentum, to kind of announce a program. Is that what would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, that definitely worked for us. Being able to give out such like significant amounts of money too, $25,000 and four $25,000 prizes, for 3 times a year too, brought a lot of attention to what we do. So I think that, yeah, starting out that way, definitely, I think there's a place. I would never give out more than $5,000 for just a pitch competition. Ever again. Like I think that's about the maximum prize that where you can capture all of the things that you want to get. That's good without overloading the amount of funding that you're given to just one team for no, with no diligence process for like, a 3-minute pitch and some Q&A and no diligence. So I don't think I would ever do $25,000 again unless I had other pieces in place. But I think, yeah, if you can do $5,000 pitch competition, maybe less, and use that to just get some excitement going, I would definitely say go for it. Yeah.
It turns out a lot of students will show up for a lot less money. So I think
Yeah.
that you're right. You don't have to have huge prizes. All right, Luis Martinez.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Great presentation. So I used to be an entrepreneurship center director. I'm now a principal at a VC fund. So I had my own competitions and I serve as a judge in lots of competitions. One of the challenges, and I'm hoping you can help sort of answer this question, is that many of these pitch competitions coming out of colleges, even including some of the premier ones that are available nationally or regionally, they're just not ready for folks like us. They're not actually real ready for real pre-seed, seed angel investors. So how do you, A, adjust expectations for students or these teams that, yeah, there's going to be someone actually in the room who's a formal pre-seed or a formal seed investor, and they'll be happy to take a look at the deal and be helpful and give you comments and judge the competition. But the likelihood that they're going to be investing is probably pretty low, not necessarily high. So number one, how do you help set student expectations that that's most likely the outcome? But now let's get back to the data in the 10 years. How do you ensure that the people that you see in 2018 or the people that you see in 2022 that have been building and going at it and doing it, like, are going to be the people that are going to be in that next echelon to be able to then really graduate into like real dilutive investment? So how do you handle setting expectations for people that are currently on, and then how do you track and then make the connections for those that you had a really early preview to 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago that are just really killing it?
Yeah. Well, that's the work. The second part is the work, right? That's what the center should be doing, and that's what our incubator is all about, right? So, with the pitch competition, like we stopped using it as the way to get in, as the way to gain more access to what we do, and we really focused on the route of let's do discovery, let's figure this out. And we actually have now a triage system where we start teams that just come in with discovery and keeping them accountable to discovery, talking to people. What have you learned? What are the insights? Once they got enough and they're like, okay, now we're into sales. Now we actually have customers. Then we run a sales stream, which is like, okay, now weekly sales meetings to see like, okay, how many people have you reached out to? How's your funnel doing? How are you closing? What are the emails? Like working with them that way. And then through that and with the traction, now they're ready for fundraising. And that's where we tap the VCs. That's where we bring in our alumni to help them with their pitch decks. That's where we get all of that action going. So we have this kind of 1, 2, 3 funnel. That is the way we develop our teams. So on that side, so the second part of your question, that's how we're monitoring, that's how we're keeping it going. Now we have the benefit of an incubator that where we can have alumni set up. A lot of entrepreneurship centers, you only get to work with them while they're students, and after students are kind of on their own. So we're in a beneficial position where we're at right now. Now in terms of setting expectations with the pitch competitions, a lot of them, it depends if they won or they lost coming out of it. But my one message to all of them in the green room after we're all done is, by the way, guys, like this pitch competition doesn't mean anything. Like the outcome of this has no bearing on your business at all. Like you should feel good if you won. Great, you did a great job. You should feel good if you got in the final, like because you also did a great job. But none of this has any bearing, and you should not use this result as information that says that, yes, I am definitely working on a great idea and people are ready to invest in me. So I kind of let them enjoy the adulation and the win, but then try to bring them down to earth as quickly as possible and say, and also, I'm going to help you. Like we are going to help you get to that stage. Like that's the work we can promise to do. If you show up, we will be there for you and help you move this idea forward. But just knowing that the win and the outcome doesn't necessarily indicate anything.
There's what you're describing is so many natural tensions in running an entrepreneurship center. One of those is the tension between education and commercial activity, right? And when we're talking about educating students, that is different than starting companies, although they obviously can overlap. We all, I think, are probably guilty of having the photo op with the big fake check. And that does either implicitly or explicitly send a signal that, hey, we think these are great entrepreneurs. And there is a downside to having those poster children and when they don't turn into great businesses. One of the things that our school's done recently, another one of those tensions, which you touched on, is the difference between student entrepreneurs and alumni entrepreneurs. And we certainly find a lot more real businesses are being grown by alumni, and they may have graduated recently, or it may have been a few years back or many years back. We have an alumni pitch competition, and we did it just last weekend. It was $100,000 investment prize, and the money is put up by angel investors. And we've done it for almost 10 years. One of the big changes was the judges are now the people that put up the money, because in the past, sometimes a good pitch might win the event, and the people that put up the money are like, that's not the one I would have chosen. So we changed our judging process there. And some of the competitors are people that we knew when they were students, and others, became entrepreneurs many years after they went through the university. So there's a lot of different ways to do these things. I do think alumni support is where you find real business activity, right? But that's not what the donors are often looking for.
Yeah. Jeff, you guys send me an invite. I'd love to check that out next year.
San Diego. Last weekend we were in Puerto Rico. Next year will be San Diego. We did it in Dublin. Like, this is a crazy thing. We move around the world. So anyway, It's a fun one. So yes.
Awesome.
All right. Maybe that's a good opportunity for us to start to close. I don't see any other hands up. So please join me in thanking John Dick from the University of Waterloo Velocity Program. Great conversation around pitch competitions. I took a lot of notes. Even though I've heard you do this before, I still learn new stuff. So really, thank you so much for that. I know there's a plug in the chat for a competition in Hong Kong. So make sure you take a look at that before we close out. And I do hope to see so many of you in Brazil and in Tallahassee later this year, and at another virtual connection before then. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Great job, John.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks for keeping the conversation going. That's great. Yeah, good conversations. And also, San Diego, that's like one of my favorite cities in the world. So